Hello everyone and welcome to Blue Tengu's live game development show where we show everything that goes into making a game from concept to completion. If you've ever wanted to make a game, we hope this will help lower the barrier to entry, maybe give you the nudge you needed to try it yourself. Even if you don't want to make a game, we hope you'll find some value in what we're doing here. It's a nice overcast day here, so hopefully my green screen doesn't start kicking up on me like it did last time. But anyway, all of the information about where you can find us is in the Twitch info down below or in our YouTube profile for those of you who are catching us later on YouTube. Just in case, we're at bluetengu.com, btengu on Twitter, facebook.com bluetengustudio, youtube.com bluetengustudio, all one word, for those of you who are watching the live stream, and Twitch TV Blue Tengu for those of you who are catching us on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, I think if I'm live, there should be a little announcement while you're watching the video, but if you missed any episodes, you can always catch them over at YouTube, and I usually put them up, let's see, lately I think it's been about usually Sunday night or Monday morning my time, so about a day or two later I put them up on YouTube. But anyway, you shouldn't have any trouble following along even if you haven't seen the past episodes. For those of you who haven't seen the show on Twitch or YouTube before, my name's Eric. I'm a game designer living here in Japan who's trying to show you everything that goes into making a game for 2 hours a week. And the coffee, again, as usual, is not kicking in yet. Hopefully about 15 minutes into this, so it'll start whirling the gears upstairs. And the reason I'm showing, everything I'm doing as opposed to making the game first and scripting out a rehearsed tutorial sorry about that, is because I want to lower the barrier people feel to making a game and hopefully inspire you to go out and try it yourself. Thank you to everyone who dropped by last week and to all of those who watched the videos on YouTube. For those of you who are here with me on Twitch now, feel free to drop suggestions or ask me questions at any time. I may not be able to answer them right away because I am working, but I'll try to get to them, and if I can't, please send me a private message here or leave us a comment on our site or the YouTube video, and I'll do my best to address it next time. You can also send me email at contact@bluetengu.com. If any of you out there are making something and you don't mind showing it off, send me a link to your stuff. I'd love to see it. Last time, someone did try to send me a link to their stuff, but unfortunately because of the spam filter that I had set up in Twitch, got blocked and I never got to see their game. So I did turn that off, so please don't spam the channel. But if you do have stuff, I'd love to see it, and I'm sure everyone who's watching would love to see it too. You can also, just send me your game, like site or information on where to find it to contact@bluetengu.com, and I could probably mention it next time I play or next time I do the show or something. I also do like Blue Tengu Unplugged episodes, which is just me playing a game, so I could also probably play the game there as well. But anyway, at this time every week for 2 hours, I come on to Twitch TV to work on the game Project Spaghetti, a top-down 2D cowboy shooter where the bullets fired bounce around the screen with a pinball mechanic. Last week, after I gave the enemy the ability to dodge bullets, I pulled out all of the basic enemies functionality into a parent class, and once that class was in place, it was easy enough to change a few variables, create a brand new enemy type, and also after that episode, I also, next episode was about putting in like title menus and being able to jump around levels and stuff. So like one thing I did last episode was, had a little trouble getting it working, but I did fix it, was having it where you can jump to different levels. All I did was rearrange like the barrels and stuff that I had going to make just kind of quick levels, placeholder levels, but in the future I'll replace them with like a graveyard level and things like that. And then after that I got to the title screen and the pause screen. The pause screen wasn't working, but I figured that one out after a little bit of trouble, but the solution was really easy. So, after the show, the overtime that I used to fix those 2 bugs, I put into the to-do list, and the first was the room jumping issue, where I kind of got it working, but it was a little fishy at the end of last episode, where it's like, I don't know if I'm really jumping from room 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. I might be jumping from 1 to 2 to 1 to 2 to 2 again or something like that. So I did take a little time to step back and consider how room management should work. Jim Moore in that show also mentioned that, what I was doing was probably, kind of haphazard, and I probably did need to think about room management, take a step back and think about it, and it helped. So what I did do, the main thing I did do was like the room manager, I had it persistent and things like that, and that was not really what I wanted it to do. I wanted it to really kind of manage the level itself. So I took that out and then figured out how to get that working. Uh, I was by doing that, I was better able to get the room flow working from the outside instead of kind of patching things in. And with the way it works now, I can easily arrange rooms however I want, because before it was like all of that stuff, what level this is was inside the room manager. So if I wanted to change, if I wanted to put the graveyard level first or later or something like that, I'd have to go in there and uncode all that stuff and move stuff around, and yeah, it's not as portable as I'd want. The ideal is to kind of think about the game itself in terms of like object-oriented programming so that you can move parts around more freely. And the other bug I fixed was the pause menu not displaying properly. The game did pause. The menu did work, functionality-wise, it did work because you could like scroll through the options and you could restart the game. The problem was the menu itself, and none of that was showing up. In Game Maker, I made an annotation in the video on YouTube as well for when I made that mistake, but there's just one little quick moment where I'm like, oh, this doesn't need to be visible because, it's a pause manager. There's no sprite involved in it, so I just unchecked that. And that was what was causing all my problems, because in Game Maker, if you don't have that visible box checked, it never goes into the draw or the draw GUI events. Makes sense. Obviously, if your object isn't visible, there's no reason to draw or draw GUI anything, and it's more efficient not to execute those empty functions, which are not going to do anything anyway. So, if you're doing a game yourself in Game Maker, just be careful about that. If you are using draw or draw GUI, absolutely make sure that you have that visible box checked. Once I did that, the menu came up properly. I did have to adjust it a little bit. One other minor fix I did make may not have been necessary, but it was kind of bugging me that I had, in each of those rooms, I had a player object in every single room, even though the player object was persistent. I'm not quite sure if Game Maker pays attention to that stuff. I think it does, because like when the player starts in the room, he always starts in the middle. Well, the player character always starts in the middle of that cowboy. But if I moved him off and went to the next level, there wasn't another one in the middle or anything. So I think Game Maker does take care of that if you have persistent checked and you try to create another object of the same type. I think it figures it out, but intuitively it's like, how would Game Maker know? Like if I had multiple enemy objects that I wanted to be persistent and they all went into the next level, they should all go in there. So yeah, I don't know. It was kind of bugging me. So what I did was I changed the player object code a little bit so that it was persistent, and I only created it if it didn't exist in a room. That way, obviously, I don't have to have, one of the other possible solutions is to put the player object in the first room and then just not any of the other ones and keep them persistent. But then if I move that first room somewhere else, I'm going to start a game with no player. So just every room does a check to make sure there's a player object. If there isn't, puts one in there. Then to get the menu options centered, I changed all of the places that were relying on like room height and room width to rely instead on like view W view, which is width, the view of the window, and the view H view, which is the height of the window, because the view is tied directly to the game's resolution, while the room size is, it extends beyond that view in most cases, and the room size doesn't change, at least not easily. And today is going to be adding more menu functionality and an important feature going forward, which is the ability to change the resolution of the game. The reason this is important is because I really need to know whether I'm going to have to make different versions of all my graphics for the different aspect ratios. I did a little post on this on www.bluetengu.com, but Do I need to make my version of my sprite for 4:3 resolutions? Your typical old school monitor resolutions like 640 by 480, 800 by 600. Those resolutions. Which because I have an old school monitor now, I'm not looking down on anyone. That's what I'm dealing with right now. So that's what partially why I've been making the game in like 640 by 480 resolution. But most people nowadays, I guess, have widescreen monitors, which is your standard like 1080p, 720 resolutions, things like that. Those are all 16 by 9, so they're a little wider. In fact, they're about 33% wider than 4:3. And if I did want to put out an iPhone version of the game, that adds yet another aspect ratio of 3:2 that I'd have to consider, depending on the iPhone. So if on changing my resolution, I notice that all the stretching that goes on looks bad, that means to make up for it, I'm going to need to figure out the aspect ratio and pick, probably one of 3 graphics. Make one graphic set that's a little fatter, make one graphic set that's a little skinnier, etc., and then try to balance them. And that means I would have 3 times as many graphics to make for the game. So, whether I have 3 times the work or just the work I was expecting, probably better to find that out now because that's a big risk if I leave it for later. So let's get started by looking at my to-do list. Jump to the desktop here. Okay, and jump to Trello.com. The link for Trello is, if you're looking at the Twitch information, it's down at the very bottom, I think. It's in the FAQ section at the end. The link for Trello's there. If you're on YouTube watching this, I usually put an annotation somewhere. Here it's probably just going to be in the, let's see if I can point it out right, because here's my hand, but it'll probably be in the corner there. I always put that up, unfortunately, because I can't link to external sites from a YouTube video. You have to type it in manually. If it's easier, you can go to google.com and just go, or any search or whatever, and just go Project Spaghetti Trello. It'll pop up. It's probably easier than trying to manually type out all those characters and stuff. But anyway, let's see. So last episode, as you can see, I did a basic rough level, did a level manager, title screen, pause screen, and then I fixed those 3 issues that were bugging me with the pause menu not showing up, the levels jumping around weird, and avoiding multiple player object creation. Also, one other thing I did do was kind of a base scaling system. I wanted to look into this because, and that was actually quite big. I wanted to look into this because, if I tried to do this during the show, it would just be a lot of like Google searching and looking at people's projects and looking at message boards and things like that to figure it out and trial and error and stuff like that. And that, yeah, it's fine. That's what I'm doing on the show. But I think that would have been a little bit too much. So I did look it up, and there's 1,000 different solutions for this problem depending on what you want to do. One solution was, if you wanted to stretch things out, you could just scale all of the sprites themselves, so you can expand them or contract them or whatever. Might still be an option, but the easiest, well, not the easiest solution, actually the hardest solution, but the one that probably gets the effect that I'm looking for the most was to, in Game Maker they have, let's see, what was it called? They have like these panels that you can write to, that you can draw to. So normally you draw to the window itself, but if you draw to one of these panels, all you have to do is, scale that panel and it'll show up properly. So that's how I did go about that. And that was a game design thing, so let me just label that. And that one as well is game design. And when I do fix these problems, I tend to leave comments, so if you do come to the Trello board, you can kind of see what I was doing. But episode 12, this week. Like I said, options screen, and the option that I'm going to be working on probably that'll take most of the show, if not all of it, is to be able to change the resolution to, a preset resolution. If I do have time, I'll do a game over menu as well. Actually, let's move that up first, since that'll probably be the easiest thing to do. And if I get to it, changing brightness, I did look up, basically it's setting an alpha layer on top that kind of brightens the whole screen. That's how to go about that in GameMaker. So that shouldn't be too hard to implement. But let's get to the game over menu. So restart, quit. Restart, go to title menu. Fire up GameMaker. And just to give you a quick tip, because this is one thing I did find out when I was doing scaling, is inside of global game settings, if you go into like Windows and some of these tabs, they have like a graphics tab in here. For a while it was like everyone was talking about, go into the global game settings like Windows and change the graphics, and I was like, what, where? There's a graphics tab to the side. It's kind of hard to see, but you can have, usually this option to interpolate colors between pixels is checked. If you're doing a retro game where you have like kind of pixelated graphics, you do not want that checked. In past episodes, for example, I did, Photoshop, for example, there was, when scaling out a picture, they had different ways to handle that scaling. Like one was bilinear, and that's the usual default mode, but what that does is it kind of blurs everything. If you just choose nearest neighbor, then everything the colors stay the same, so it doesn't blur. This is kind of the same principle. Interpolate colors between pixels. What it'll do is if it stretches out, then it'll kind of stretch out the colors as well and kind of fill them in. And what that does is it makes it kind of blurry and muddy. Not what you want to do for a retro game. You want to keep it very pixelated, so keep that check off. And let's see, so for the game over menu, right now, for example, let's expand that out. Right now I do have a game over screen, but all it says is press any key to continue, and when you continue you start over from the first level. In the future, whether I choose to have it where if you die you start over from the level you just left off on, or you start over from the beginning, probably want to give the player an option to go back to the title screen. So I do want to change that into a menu. And so probably this part is what's going to be fixed. So let's see, right now, Sprite GUI menu. I have start, options, exit, return to game, but I do need a return to title menu as well. So I'm going to jump over to Photoshop and make that one real quick. And probably the closest option is going to be this one. No, I don't need vector-based output. Actually, let's see, that's return to game. Oh well, whatever. Not sure why it's doing all of that to me. And hopefully that's enough to get the player instructions on what to do. And this is the highlighted version. Guess to keep that font color, I better type it in manually. Okay. And return the title. And this is the highlighted version. convenient that most of the words are the same. And the unhighlighted version. Yep. Okay, so now I just need to bring those into GameMaker. And do that by adding sprites. Should I copy and paste? Nah, let's just do it normally. Sprites, menu, title. And load the sprites. So let's have the unhighlighted version as the default. And then, as always, I do need to scale this. So stretch. And do I have these other ones centered? Yes, I do. Okay, so I do need to center. Makes it easier to line them up on the screen depending on, however big the screen is to keep them in the center. And I do need to also add another image from file, which is the highlighted version. Let's see, what was I doing last time? See, this is why it's usually good to group similar tasks together so you don't forget things, especially when you have a week between them. So let's see, keep original size, use new size, stretch. No, that's not what I want to do. Okay, keep original size means keep, not the original size of the file I'm putting in now, but keep the original size of the sprite that's in there now. Okay, and stretch. There we go. Okay, so now I have sprite menu title ready to go. I do have a menu manager for the title, so I do need to make a menu manager for the game over screen now. Thankfully, sorry about that. Throat's drying up on me today, I guess because the weather outside's really dry even though it's overcast. So I do need to do similar things in here within probably this game over object. I already have an object called game over. So let's see, should I just copy and paste? Yep, let's do a lot of copy and pasting. Okay, it destroys the player. I do need to put a comment about that. Because otherwise it's like, I just started game over, why am I destroying game over? Okay, there we go. Just so I know what that does. And current item, for the game over screen, it's just going to be continue and return to title. So continue is going to be the default, because if you make the default return to title and the user just accidentally presses it when they wanted to continue, that's going to be a big hassle. Whereas if they accidentally continue the game, at least they can just go to the options menu and jump back to the title screen. So that's the default. Let's see, menu manager, draw GUI. This again is going to be probably very similar. Yep. Okay. And all I have is continue. And make the other option title. And those are my only options, so I can get rid of this. And get rid of one of these. So let's see, what did I call those sprites? Sprite menu continue and sprite menu title. those of you who saw me doing this last week, one thing you'll notice that's a little different is I do use draw sprite Xed instead of just draw sprite, and what that is over here you can define other things like the X scale, the Y scale, the rotation, etc. when you draw the sprite. I need to do that for when I scale for resolutions. So I switched all of these over to draw sprite Xed commands. The rest of this should be the same as before. Yeah, here's what I was doing before. I was drawing sprite and I was also using like the current room height and stuff like that, which was no good. Okay, well that should be it. Continue and title. Alright, there's my draw GUI. And next, press enter. It's going to be the same kind of code. So key press, enter, and again change these, continue, or title. And right now it looks like I have it set up to go to global current level, which means it should jump back to the place where the player died. And it should destroy the game over screen when it does that. If I go to the title screen, go to, let's see, RM title. Oh, it's a number, isn't it? We'll see if that works. I don't think that'll work. It'll probably give me an error. And I do need to destroy the game over object because its function is done. I also need to change global. Let's see, what should I do? I guess since player is destroyed, I mean, it could just be a matter of doing this. But, for score and other things that the players accumulated through the game, may want to delete some of that stuff too. This will be easy to check, when I return to the title screen and start a new game from there. If I've got a bunch of stuff left over, like the number of bullets or the number of lives or the score or anything like that, then it'll be pretty obvious that I need to send a reset command to reset all of those variables. Right now I'm just going to try changing the global current level to 0, which I believe is what I'm doing when I first start the game with my globals here. Oh, okay, I do set global current level to 1, so I guess there is no 0. Whoa, there is no 0. Yeah, I kind of almost want to just execute this again, don't I? But then again, I don't want to change sprite scale and stuff like that on people, do I? No, actually I'm not using that way. Yeah, it might be worth resetting this, unless title does that. Title does have an object system, but system's persistent. Yeah, I think I want to do this every time I come into title screen, don't I? But for now, let's put it in here. Let's just, I want to execute that script. Execute script globals, that's what I want to be doing. Okay, yeah, I need to do something there. Let's see. I wonder what it would be called. I wonder if there is just an execute script. Call. Alright, I have to look that up. I have to figure out how to do that in script because only one of those options requires that. Yeah, calling script execute. There's what I want. Well, this is obviously a person asking a question, so I should figure out if this is working. Okay, this has a little check marks next to it. So I'll do that. And I'll call it global script. And the script is called script globals. Okay, and since this is in there, I don't need to do that anymore. Alright, well that should reset everything when I go back to the title screen. Hopefully this works. Let's see how I'm doing that in other places. Room manager, step, room start. Must be doing that over here. Okay, it is an index. Okay, it is an index, so I would need to add the title screen into this, wouldn't I? And that should still be fine because I'm adding 0. So global level list 0. Actually, I don't think I'm even using this, to be honest. Yeah, something tells me that's not what I need to be doing. Well, we'll find out if this works or not. Let's see if there are other room commands. No, doesn't look like there's other room commands, so hopefully that figures it out to go to title. And then reset, instance destroy, okay. So theoretically, that should be all I need to do. And go to room town. Okay, so let's get rid of this any key thing, because that's no longer how I'm doing the game over stuff. And I do have continue in title. So let's copy more stuff from the title screen here. Up and down. So I need to change, make it so that the player can change the options using the cursor keys. That applies here as well. So key press up. If it's on continue, then I want to switch the highlighted option to title. If it's title, switch it to continue. And the same goes for down, except it's the other way around. Actually, since there's just two options, there's not really much reason to do anything here because there's only two that can switch from, but in case I add another option. I will switch the order just to remind me that down works the opposite as up. So theoretically, this should work. One problem, actually. I think I might be missing something. Draw GUI. Yeah, actually, there is one more thing I do need to change for the game over option as opposed to the normal title screen, and that's how high these things are being displayed. Because I have game over just kind of right in the middle, so these need to be a little lower on the screen. Okay, so divided by 2 means kind of centered. So instead of being centered, I want these to be a little bit further down, which means let's try 1.5 and see how far down these things go. Hopefully that moves them down below that game over text, assuming this even works. So far, so good. Okay. Let's see. I do need to die really quick, so that means shooting myself. Okay. And it says press any key to continue, but obviously I disabled that. These do need to be further down, because right now it's a third, I guess, so I need it to be even further down. And I do need to get rid of press any key to continue as well. So I think I do need to go to Photoshop and get rid of that. And it might actually be better to have game over be just one line. So let's work with title screen actually. That way I can keep things consistent. And just to be a little more gentler to the player, I'm not going to keep these all caps. I'm going to do it just like the title screen. I'm not even sure what this is. Let's get rid of it. It's probably just something I did by mistake by clicking in the wrong place with the text thing there. Okay. Game over screen, yeah. Okay, that's that. And obviously this is just a rough placeholder. Otherwise, you know, what's the point of having a Photoshop file with just text in it when I could just draw text in a Game Maker? It's because later on there's probably going to be more graphics on this thing, but this is just very rough. And I want to call this game over screen, just so I can keep that other game over graphic. Let's see, bullet player obstacle GUI. Backgrounds, okay, I have it in background, that's why. So, in terms of Game Maker, I'll keep it as BG Game Over. And as always, I'm going to double that. Okay. And actually, after doing that, I should be able to do the options exactly as I do them on the title screen. So let's change this back to draw everything halfway down the screen. let's see what happens. There we go. If I choose to continue, well, it's kind of hard to tell. I guess I started on stage 1. So let me jump ahead to stage 2 and see what happens when I get game over here. Yep, okay, it restarts me on stage 2, so it is continuing. And now what I want to check is, I've got a score and a high score there, so 100 and 100. One thing I do want to check is to make sure that those get reset when I restart the game from the title screen. More importantly, script execute global script. So obviously that script execute thing was not what I wanted, or I need to add quotes or something. Let's find out. So this is not working. It does say index. Was it not able to find script globals? Let me look up script execute here. I don't think this is how it's supposed to be working. Execute string. Let's see if someone else has a better example here. No, I was doing that fine. Okay. Well, that's not very helpful. Execute a piece of code. Script name. What's this? Well, alright, if it's going to be a hassle about it, let's try a different site. Let's go to Simon's GameMaker website and see what he has to say. Not that I can speak Norwegian, but I can at least read the code. Script execute script. Okay. Am I making this more complicated than I need to? Like, is it actually just, you know, doing something like this? Oops. Getting too used to VBA here. Script globals. I don't know. We'll see. Be awesome if that's all it was. Okay, I was obviously making things more complicated than it needed to be. having a script execute commands only needed if you're using the GUI stuff. Otherwise, it's just executing the script in code. Okay, let's see what happens here. Alright, now I need to figure out if everything's getting reset or not. So I do have... I suspect it is, because otherwise I'd have no lives. One unfortunate problem is that high score is also going to be reset. Right. So high score is the only thing I don't want to reset. But in the future, high score is going to be saved to a file, so along with whatever other data on the user, like if I want to say that the user can select any level they've been to so far. You know, obviously when they quit the game, I don't want to restart all that stuff, so there are going to be things that are going to go into like a config file or an ini file or a save file. This is going to be one thing that's going to have to go into there. So just to make a note of that when I do save games, because I do have that as a task somewhere here. Let's get rid of all that. I think it's somewhere down here in my task list. Save system. I know it's over here on the stories. Maybe I should add it just to make sure I don't forget it. Yeah, let's add it to make sure I don't forget it. And that's, again, because I don't know how to do that in GameMaker, that's probably going to be quite a large task. So I will make that a 2-hour task. Could probably split it between saving and loading. Actually, that's rather important, so I'm going to put that there. Alright, but the high score is going to be something that has to be saved across games. The other stuff, you know, speed, sprite scale, dodge, cooldown, all that needs to be reset every time the game's reset. But it does appear that my game over system is now working. So let me get rid of some of that stuff I don't need. Press enter. I don't need any of this stuff anymore. And just so I know what I'm doing. But actually, I do need to do it here too, don't I? No, that's going to be kind of tricky. Actually, what is it doing now? When I hit continue, is it keeping the player score? I suspect it is. Since I just died, I couldn't see, but maybe because it's getting rid of the player, it's not that bad. So I have 100 points. If I select continue, do I still have 100 points? No? Alright. Well, that's fine then. That seems to be working alright. Good. Good, good, good. I'm a little worried about it, but let's call it a QA task. Quality assurance. The last line of defense before a game goes to market. Let's make sure we QA game over, continue, and title screen flow. Just to make sure that at some point I do look into that stuff. Because it would be very disappointing to the player if that didn't work. Because that would be very, very frustrating. Okay, so I do have the game over menu now. That is done. Next is going to be doing the options screen. Let's see. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that in Photoshop here. And then I'll probably take a quick break after that. And I want the options screen to look like the other screens for consistency, so let's open title screen again. And let's call this options screen. And again, this layer I don't need. I don't know why it keeps giving me a warning about this text here. I'll have to look that up after the show to make sure that Photoshop's not doing something behind my back. Okay, jump back into here, add that sprite. Or actually, that's going to be a background. So create a background, call this one BG options, and load in that thing that I just did. And stretch it out. And later on, because it is stretching and doing that whole aliasing thing on me in GameMaker, what I probably do want to do is, after I get scaling working, put all of the assets back to 320 by 200 and scale them up using the system I'm using, which doesn't do that, you know, fill in the blanks with shadows stuff. That's what aliasing is. So you can see, I mean, it's kind of hard to see it probably on YouTube or whatever when you're watching this, but you know where my pointer is now, you see this kind of light blue stuff. Obviously when I wrote the text that wasn't there, but because I stretched it out, it's trying to be helpful by smoothing things out for me. So it's adding those little shadows, but I don't want that to happen in the final game. It's fine for now though. And I want options manager. Create object, options manager. And that'll probably be similar to the menu manager. So when it's created, I want to go with back. Let's see. If the user pauses it, or if they go through the title screen, yeah, it's not going to be continue, it's going to be back. So I want the default to be, you know, if the user just jumps into the options menu and hits something, I want it to just go back to where they were before they entered the options menu. I do realize that there's going to be one problem by having this in a separate object, and that's when it comes to pausing, because this pause manager froze every object except for the pause manager, but I have an options menu in there. So I suspect what's going to happen is if I select options from pause manager, this thing's just never going to be created because it's frozen. We'll see. Maybe after everything's frozen and you create a new object from that, maybe it's working. We'll find out. I suspect I'll run into a problem there, but I can save that problem for the future. So draw GUI. Same thing, have menu options here. Back is actually going to be the bottom menu option, but it's still going to be selected by default. It's just going to be at the bottom. What other options do I have? I'm going to have change resolution, brightness, what else? Music, like the music volume, sound volume. Let's see, what else do I have planned here? Music, sound, resolution, brightness. Okay, that's all I have. So I have those 4 options in addition to going back. So resolution, since I'm going to be creating that next. Brightness, music, sound, and back. Music, sound, back. And just to make sure that I don't accidentally leave one of these in here, I'm just going to delete these now. I don't think I updated the comments on the game over screen. I mean, this seems really obvious. I mean, you just look at the code and you kind of know what's going on, but the more comments I leave, the easier it is to read later. So I do want to update these now, because otherwise when would I update them, right? Okay. And resolution and brightness. So I need to make all these now, but I also need to change this. Because right now, everything's going to be drawn in the center, but because I have these three, they're all at the same place. They're just going to be written right on top of each other. So what I want to do is, let's see, let's do 6, 10, 12. All right, so I have 12. So divided by 12 up, divided by 12 down. Just bust out my calculator to see what this is going to be like. So my screen is 480 tall, so when I divide it by 12, that gets me 40. So I've got 480 divided by 2 minus 40, so it draws it at 200. So I want minus, theoretically, if I want minus 40, to draw one above that, I want minus 80. So 6. Okay, well 6 is right then. And I need to do this for this one as well. This one can be 12. This one doesn't need to be changed. This one needs to be plus 6, plus 12, and this one needs to be plus 6. All right, now let's draw those in. So resolution, brightness, music, sound, back, I need all of those. Shouldn't take too long to do those in Photoshop. Maybe I should stop closing Photoshop after every time I use it. Let's go to there and menu options. Yeah, sure, let's just open the options one. Let's do back first. Menu option back. And the highlighted version. Save it and save the highlighted version. Am I capitalizing this? Highlight. Did. Yeah, okay. Yeah, drawing these things out in Photoshop is probably not the most exciting thing to be watching, but it does need to be done, and I do want to show everything that goes into making a game, so tedious stuff is what goes into making a game, unfortunately. That's just the reality of it. Let's see, brightness. That's fine. Actually, let's just call it brightness, because at the end of the day I'm probably going to have like a slider or something next to it. So this is going to take up way too much screen real estate. Alright. So that's the highlighted version. Actually, I do need to save this as another file. First, so that I don't accidentally overwrite something. Pixar file is. Okay, this is the highlighted version. And oops, you need to switch those. Otherwise, it's just going to be the same graphic for both. Okay, next up is brightness resolution. So again, I'm just not going to say change resolution, I'm just going to say resolution. And at the end of the day, to fit everything on the screen, I may have to shrink these down to push them off to the left or something, but I can worry about that when I start actually implementing that stuff. This is just to make sure the basic options menu works. And the non-highlighted version. And music and sound. This one, unfortunately, I do need to mention volume in there. So otherwise, it's like, what am I changing about the music, right? And that's the highlighted version. I do need to save this. Music highlighted. Did that again. And the non-highlighted version. Okay, and I need to do sound effects. I am going to say sound SFX volume instead of sound volume because otherwise kind of hard to know what exactly sound volume means. And the non-highlighted version. Okay, I think I've got everything, but I'm going to leave Photoshop up this time so I don't have to keep opening it. Let's see, more menu options. So create sprite, SPR back, menu option, back, and stretch it out. Back highlighted. And stretch, keeping the original size. So that's fine. Center it. Gotta make sure to do that, otherwise these are going to be going all over the place. And sprite resolution. That's the one I want. And the highlighted version. Okay. After adding so many of these, I'm starting to get a little better at it. Brightness. Load sprite. Brightness. Save myself a step there by not jumping out. Sprites, sound. Well, let's go in the same order. Music. And the highlighted version, center it. Final sound effects. Sound, edit the sprite, stretch it out. Add the highlighted version. Stretch that out, center it, and there we go. Actually, I need to rename these, don't I? Since all the other ones are using menu, I do need to rename these. I should have paid a little more attention to that when I was doing this. Rename is F2, so I guess I could remember that. Let's try it. F2. There we go. Okay, that should be all the sprites I need. So menu, back, resolution, brightness, music, sound. And jumping back into here, let's make sure that's what I'm calling all of these. Resolution, brightness, music, sound, back. Yep. And let's make sure I copy all of these down to the other options. And the only thing I need to change is which one's highlighted. So if it's brightness, highlight brightness. If it's music volume, highlight music. If it's sound, highlight sound. And if it's back, which is the default, then highlight back. Okay, well that's the Draw GUI part. Now I need to actually handle what happens when the user does something with that. So key press enter, paste that in. What was it? Resolution. Brightness. Music. And sound and back. And I'm going to need to remember which room I need to go to here. Because I do have the options manager. Well, it is set up as an object as opposed to a room, but I will be setting it up as a room, so yeah. Maybe it should work like pause manager then, where it goes over what you select. That might be the way to go. I'll think about it during the break, but I think that's how I want to do it. So for now, all of these just do nothing, basically. The only one that does something is back, which destroys the instance. And I need to do the same up-down stuff as before. So key press up. Now I actually have to care about order. So resolution's at the top. And the next one was brightness. And then if it's brightness, actually this is for up. So I want this to be the other way around, don't I? Back. If it's brightness, then go to resolution. If it's music, then go back up to the brightness option. If it's sound, then jump back up to the music option in the options menu. And if it's back, then jump back up to sound volume. Okay, that's for if the user presses up. If they press down, then things behave a little more obviously. Oh, because I copied and pasted. Okay, I was like, wait a minute, where'd that stuff come from? Alright, so let's switch this back. So now I go down to brightness, go down to music volume, down to sound volume, down to back, and back loops around to resolution. Okay, so that should be that. Let's create an options room. Actually, I should probably duplicate it in an existing room because that'll be faster. So let's duplicate title. That way I have something to work with. And I have all the resolution settings and everything else as they should be. I do need to change the background to options. And I think that's all I need to do. I don't need system in here, so I can get rid of that. I don't need the menu manager, so I can get rid of that. But now I do need to put in that options object that I just made. So options manager, pop that in. And yeah, okay, it's at 0, 0, just in case. Because some things will draw depending on where the object is located, so I want to have it in the upper left to make it easy. So now theoretically I should be able to jump into this options room. Let's try going from the title menu into that, just to make sure it works. So up until now, I've just had this comment to go to the options menu which didn't exist. Options. Alright. And for now I'm not going to worry about the pause menu. Let's try this. Just to see if it jumps back out to the title. I'm not going to worry about the options menu when it's called from the pause menu yet. Hopefully after all those changes I don't have errors here. Okay. Yep. Brilliant. Okay. Now the only one I have to worry about is what happens when you access it from the pause menu. You may want to have a separate options object that is for the options menu when it's called from the pause menu, because oops. Wow, okay, I guess I need to fix that, don't I? Now all of these go to options. Okay, the problem is, because it's been created once, so let's do one more thing. Other, room start. Let's copy this and see if that helps that problem that I was having. Because it only resets the thing that's selected when this is first created, but because it's already been created, okay, that's going to need some debugging, isn't it? Let's see, show instance variables. Current? Let me see something here. What was it called? Current item. So menu manager dot current item is what I want to be looking for. item start. Okay, well that's fine for now. Switches to options. Room stops existing. I jump back. And it is start. It is start. So why doesn't it start the game now? Why does it go back into the options screen? That's interesting. Go to global current level. Okay, so it's this that I think is causing the problem. Let's reset this to 1 and see if that helps. I suspect it won't, but let's find out. Yeah, that is obviously not the problem. Okay. Well, something about calling this... Oh, I see what's going on. The problem is I have this options room second again. Keep forgetting this every single time, but with GameMaker, I've even warned about it last week, I think. GameMaker, the order of these rooms over here on the side is actually important. This is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So before, 1 meant room town. Now it means room options. So I need to move this down to the end, and hopefully that'll do it. And that actually gives me an idea. I could just jump back to the previous room, but in any case, that should fix that problem. So I don't need that anymore. And I don't need to do anything in here either. Yeah, that should be fine. Alright, let's try this again. Hopefully it starts the game. Options back. Yeah, okay. Now to finally get back to what I was about to describe here was when I hit pause, you can still see the game in the background, but you can select options. Now, whether I want a special options menu that kind of still shows some of the game so that you realize that you're still in the game or not, gonna have to think about that. I will make that a task for the future, actually. I did finish off doing the options screen, and I did the options menu, so that's working fine. Now I just need to worry about changing the resolution, but options menu, pause screen version. And this might actually be kind of a large task, so I'm going to make that an hour task. And that is game design. So that's something that needs to go over here as well. So now the only thing left for today is to try and get it so that I can change the resolution. But I am going to take a quick break here. So let's go ahead and jump out of that stuff. I don't think I need Photoshop anymore now, so I will get rid of it and jump off my desktop. Okay, so I will take a quick break. I should be back in about 2 minutes. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, it'll just be a quick fade out and fade in, as if nothing ever happened. Thank you for waiting while I took that quick break. For those of you who didn't catch the intro, this is Blue Tengu's live game development show, where we show everything that goes into making a game from concept to completion. All of the information about where you can find us is in the Twitch info down below, or in our YouTube profile for those of you who are catching this later. But just in case, we're at www.bluetengu.com, btengu on Twitter, facebook.com Blue Tengu Studio, youtube.com Blue Tengu Studio for those of you who are watching the live stream with me now, and Twitch TV Blue Tengu for those of you who are watching us later on YouTube. The game we're making is Project Spaghetti, top-down 2D cowboy shooter where the bullets fired bounce around the screen with a pinball mechanic. And before the break, let's jump back to the desktop here. Get that out of the way. Let's see. My microphone is on. I always worry about that, but before the break, I did get the game over menu in place. So if our player dies, they have the option of returning back to the title screen or continuing where they left off. From the title screen, they have the options menu. Right now, none of these do anything. The first of these things that I'm going to want to change because, frankly, music volume as sound effects volume, there's no way to test that until I actually put sounds into the game, so there's no point in really worrying about these now. Plus, I'm pretty sure that they're going to be easy to implement because it's probably just a slider or a simple function or something that says play back these kind of sounds at a certain number of volume. Maybe, depending on how GameMaker works, sounds and background music will be in the same category. I hope not, because let's take a little quick aside here. When you're working with sound and music and voice and things like that in the game, obviously there's no voice in this, but usually they go into different categories. So like music will, because music files are quite big, they're not usually, and they don't need to respond to what you're doing in the game usually right off the bat, so usually they're streamed in, which means they're not in memory. It's just the whole thing is not in memory. It's just it takes what it needs to play and puts that in memory. Usually with long voices as well, because those files can be big. Those aren't just all kept in memory too, because there could be a lot of them. The things that are kept in memory so that they can be played the instant you want them are sound effects. Because if you shoot a gun, like if the player hits shoot, you want that sound effect right there. As soon as they shoot, because if there's lag, the game feels a little bit wonky, a little bit broken. For music, if the music starts just a second or something later than you want it to, not ideal, but it's not going to be game breaking. So most game systems, I know Unity allows you to separate these two into like streamed sounds and sound effects. I hope GameMaker has the same thing. I'm sure it does, because otherwise people wouldn't be able to use it for making, professional quality games or whatever. So I'm pretty sure there's going to be sound and music, and those are going to be handled differently. If that's the case, then it shouldn't be too difficult to change the volume on those. Brightness, I'll get to that next episode probably, but all that's going to be is basically putting a sheet of transparent white on top of everything to just kind of bring the colors, it's alpha, just kind of bring those colors up. So if it's black, it starts to get grayer and grayer. That's how brightness works, so that shouldn't be too tough either. The one that's going to be tough is resolution. And right now, I did put in some of the base framework for switching resolution, like I said at the beginning of the show. Let me turn these enemies' bullets off with F3. I have it right now where if I press F6, it doubles the size of the screen. There are many different ways to go about this in GameMaker, but I found one online that uses post-draw. So I'll let those bad guys circle around while I go over here. And let's see, where's script? Post-draw. So post-draw means after doing all the drawing stuff, hence post-draw. So what this is I've set it up so that if there's been a global resolution change, which means if I've hit F6 to change the resolution, then, well, first off, say don't keep changing the resolution. And then I'm going to use a function called application surface. Well, the surface is the thing that I was talking about at the beginning of the show. It's that plate that you can draw on. That's not just the screen. So you draw everything on this plate, and then you can stretch that plate as you need to. And one of the things that's good about that is if you have a pixel game, a pixel-based game, GameMaker doesn't try to fill in the details for you with interpolation or anything like that. It just literally stretches everything out. So I can keep that pixel effect like you saw here. Like if I increase the size, everything's just bigger, which is exactly what I want. And, resize the surface. And regardless of whether I've changed the resolution or not, I use this draw surface ext, which means stretch out to fit something. The thing I'm stretching out is that application surface, that, you know, that piece of paper I'm drawing to, that plate I'm drawing to. And the location is in the middle of the screen. And how much I stretch it out is based on this global scale parameter, which is what I'm changing when I hit F6, which is in here. So all I'm doing is switching between global scale 1 and 2 for now. Now, if I want to work with resolutions, I have to worry about aspect ratios and things like that as well. So right now I'm using global scale, which is x and y are both being multiplied by the same amount. So I just get this, 4x3 square that's just increasing in size. But if I want to do resolution, I want to be able to increase the x by a certain factor, increase the y by a different factor. So I need to split these out. That's going to be the first thing I have to do here. But since that could very well break the game if I make a mistake, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and make a backup of my project. And I'm going to say before resolution option. So if worse comes to worse, I can always jump back to this if I screw things up big time and work on it, with overtime or whatever. Hopefully I know what I'm doing. We'll find out. So let's go into here, and in terms of being able to access resolution from the options menu and pick from different resolutions, I'm not going to worry about that for now, because obviously, as you can see, that's a 1.5 hour task in total, and I only have about 30 minutes left, so I am going to split that out into options menu, resolution options. And I suspect that's probably about... If I can get resolution working, the system working, it shouldn't be that hard to do. But there's no way I'm getting it done today, so... I guess it's game design as graphics. It's kind of graphics, I guess, more than anything. Let's move that off here. Well, no, I guess it is game design. So I'll move that into that label here. And turn that off. Okay, so I've pulled half an hour out of that. Hopefully this goes quicker than an hour, but we'll find out. So now, instead of global scale, I want to do global X scale and global Y scale. For now, I'm not going to worry about the different resolution aspect ratios. I'm just going to get to make sure that X scale and Y scale are working first. So it's going to look exactly the same as what I was just doing if I get everything working right. But now, instead of just using global scale, I'm going to be using X scale and Y scale in all of these functions. So if I can get this working right, then the rest should be fairly easy. I do have an F5 function here, which does full screen. But I'm not going to worry about full screen for now. But I do need to update these, because otherwise it's just going to give me an error when I try to run the code. So now I get to do the fun thing of hunting for all of these global scales. First one is X. because that's width. That one's height. That one's width again for stretching. That one's height again for stretching. At least it'll be easy to tell if I miss one of these because it won't run. It'll just say line whatever has an error in it. Global scale again. That's X. X. That's X as well, actually. That one's Y. If you want to know how I'm able to see what's going on here, at the bottom of the screen it says, draw sprite, blah, 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 and it just highlights the one that I'm modifying now, which is why I'm able to tell if I need to use the X scale or the Y scale. This one, as you can see, the H is highlighted, so I need to use the Y scale. Because if I mistake one of these X scales and Y scales, crazy things are going to happen and I'm not going to know what to fix. So I need to be very careful about this. Being careful now can save me hours of work later. And I need to do the same thing here. Yeah, it's like diffusing a bomb or something. I'm about ready to start sweating here. Make sure I get the right ones in here, otherwise I'm really going to create a problem for myself later. I don't think I'm doing anything with scale in here. I think that's about it for that. Then I think in all my managers as well, like my menu managers, I think I'm doing stuff with scale as well. That seems to be okay. There we go. X scale, Y scale. X scale, Y scale, X scale, Y scale. Okay, these ones are pretty straightforward. Yep. Yeah, okay, that's fine. X scale, X scale, X scale. First one's X scale, the second one's Y scale. These ones are pretty straightforward. Okay, that's that. And I think I'm doing poster on here as well. That's width. And that's height. And stretching out by width and height. Okay, that's good. Because the pause manager kind of works on its own, has its own post draw, because everything gets frozen when I do a pause, which means system gets frozen, which means those post draws don't happen. So I have to put those into the pause menu. Let's get rid of this since I don't need it anymore. Keep wanting to put these before the dots for some reason. Must be the writer in me or something adding to the end of a sentence. Y, X, Y, X, Y. Okay, and now for the fun one, options. Plenty to change in here. X, 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 X. Might as well change this one while I'm at it. Almost put the wrong one in there. At least with the options menu, it'll be kind of easy to tell which one I made a mistake in, because there'll just be one option that's looking really weird. And then I'll be thinking, okay, well, I probably messed up the scale on it. So at least this isn't quite as nerve-wracking as the other spots. Am I using scale anywhere else? Good question. Let's find out. It'll give me an error if I am. See, there we go. Draw event object system, action 1. Okay, I think I'm global scale, blah, 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 blah. Execute. Okay, well, that would do it. There's X scale and a Y scale in here. These are obviously some of the other attempts I made at getting things to stretch properly. None of them quite did what I wanted it to do until I found this solution online. Okay, so it's running, which means I've probably got all those global scales worked out. Let's see if it still works when I hit F6. Okay, it still does work when I hit F6. Options is fine. The game itself is fine. And the pause menu is also fine. Okay. One thing I'm noticing, I do want to change now before I forget about it, is not options. The pause menu. I don't want the player to just exit the game from the pause menu. That's a little weird. So what I want to do is emulate what I'm doing in options here, which is go back to the title screen. So rather than ending the game, let's send the player back to title. And just to make sure that works, jump in. And I do need to change one more thing too. Options Manager, Draw GUI. Oops, I keep wanting to go into options, I mean pause. I no longer want to use exit. I want to use back. Or not back, title. I think. Let's see, what did I call it? Yeah, sprite menu title. So that now from the pause menu you can go back to the title screen. And I do need to change these as well. Now that I have that functionality in here, I want to make sure I don't leave anything behind, because these tasks are theoretically done, so if I don't remember to do it now, I may not remember to do it later. So start, pause. Well, unfortunately that's quite large. Well, alright, that's a problem. I need to also, let's see, I need to also unfreeze things when I go back. Well, it should be doing that. Instance activate all. Guess I have to do that a little early. So, well, I'll be doing it twice, but hopefully that'll fix it, because I don't think I can jump to another room if I don't have it going. Continue works fine, it's just title for some reason that doesn't. Am I missing something else? I do have this. Oh, well, that would do it. Alright. Left one of those exits in there. Obviously, it'll never equal exit because that option was deleted. Okay, good. I didn't have to reactivate instances because it just destroyed itself and did things properly. Okay, good. Now I just need to stretch out this little plate. Let's double the width. No, I don't need it that big. Let's do that. Put it back in the center. I always say I suspect, but I suspect it'll show up in a weird place because I think I was doing stuff to center it in the game itself. No? Okay. I do need to increase the size a little bit there. So let's jump it up a little bit. Make sure to recenter the origin. Okay, there we go. Works fine. And the resolution change is working fine now, so theoretically I should be able to change the X dimensions and the Y dimensions on their own, which means I should be able to change the aspect ratio of the game. And where was I doing all that? System. I need to organize this a little bit better. I'll probably do that before the next episode so that everything's either in alphabetical order or some kind of logical order. Maybe put them into groups or something. Let's see, which one am I doing it on? F6. So when I hit the F6 key right now, all it's doing is doubling the size of both of those. So how about I keep a variable called global scale, and before I get the error where I don't have such a variable, I wanted to make sure I deleted it before to make sure that it gave me an error if I was still using it somewhere, but now I don't need to do that because I've already ferreted all those global scales out. So now what I can do is say, if global scale is 1, then xscam is 1. That's what happens when I talk and type at the same time. So the default setting is just going to be 1 by 1. Not having parentheses there really bugs me. It's just having a C++ background that kind of makes me want to put parentheses around everything. And for the second setting, I'm going to keep the whole just double the screen thing. But what I'm going to do different is the third option. Let's see, what do I want to do here? See, the problem is so your standard 1080p resolution here, 1920 divided by 1080 is 1.77777, goes on forever. That's kind of what I want to emulate here, but I can't do that, so I guess what I could do is say that and hope GameMaker figures it out for me. I guess I don't need parentheses around this. I'm going a little crazy there. And global y scale is equal to just 1. No, that's not what I want to do, is it? 16 divided by 9. No, I don't think that's what I want to be doing. So I think it'll stretch it out way too much. Because all that's saying is, because unfortunately I have the height in here, which is not quite what I want. Going back to the calculator. For example, the resolution that I'm currently at is 640 by 480, which means 1.333333, which means x is 33%, a third fatter than the height. If it's 16 by 9, that means it's even wider. It's actually a third even wider than this, which means for x scale, I don't necessarily want to be using 1.7 blah 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 blah. I want to be using this number basically, 1.33333. This is going to be extremely counterintuitive. You know, even though I'm doing a 16.9, why am I using 4 divided by 3? Extremely counterintuitive, unfortunately counterintuitive, but the reason is, going back to the calculator, that 16 by 9 mode, this means that there's 1.77777 pixels across for every pixel down. And the difference between this and the normal, 1.3333 pixels across for every 1 pixel down, is this. And is that right? 16 by 9, so 1.7 minus 1. Yeah, okay, I guess that is right. So actually it's not quite 4 by 3, is it? One times 1 plus 1 times 1 plus. And this one's going to be even more complicated. Yeah, we'll see what happens here. If I screwed up my math, it's going to be extremely obvious that I screwed it up. Greater than 4. Then reset everything. Alright, well, let's find out what happens if it doesn't give me an error. My first press should be the same. That's fine. The next press is where things are going to start going crazy. Yep. Seems to be working alright, actually. Obviously, the menu options are all designed for that 4 by 3 aspect ratio, so those are all screwed up. They're not centered properly. Okay, that one's weird. That one's weird. So the last one, I'm not doing it right. This one appears to be doing it right. Don't need sprites anymore, so let's close all these out. Okay, the only one I need to be working with right now is system. So this last one is screwy. Yeah, I can see why it would be screwy. But I don't think I want to do 2 plus that. So it basically has to be 2.8888, etc. Let's put the ideal over here. This should be 2.888888. This should be 1.44444444. And this one's working fine because that 16 divided by 9 minus 4 divided by 3 is giving me the 0.44444, and that's getting added to 1. In this case, I think what I need to be doing is, I do need to be multiplying this, don't I? I need to be multiplying this part. Okay. That should work. Because I need to have, instead of 0.44444, I need 0.88888, which means I need to multiply that 0.4444 by 2, and then I need to add that to 2. Okay, so my math was a little bit screwy there. Hopefully this will give me a nice giant widescreen that'll go off my monitor, because I don't have widescreen, a widescreen monitor. That one's fine. That one's still weird, isn't it? Still weird. Is it because GameMaker's automatically preventing me from having something bigger than my monitor? That could be the case. That could actually be the case. To test that, yeah, GameMaker's probably being helpful by not allowing resolution to go outside of my actual screen. So this is just too big for my monitor, unfortunately, so it's impossible for me to test it. So let's try something else. Just so I don't lose this, I'll keep that. Regular. But I will instead have a smaller version. Okay. That way I'll have a smaller version to test. It'll be really tiny, but as long as it works. Yeah, okay, so that's 16 by 9. It's just really tiny. No one would ever have this resolution except maybe on like a Android device or something. And that works. Okay. So it was GameMaker trying to be helpful by saying, don't allow this person to resize the window beyond the size of their monitor. So it was trying to resize it, but when it hit those sides, it stopped there, but it didn't stop scaling the Y. So even though it was supposed to be a widescreen view, it actually ended up being just this square, basically. And I can jump back to normal mode. Let's make sure the game looks fine too. Okay, so obviously I'm going to have to fiddle with GUI stuff for widescreen mode, because everything I have right now is designed for 4:3. So that's why I wanted to do this today. It does give me kind of an idea for the workload that I have in front of me. And in terms of the way these look, the sprite, oh, alright, yep. Let me turn off shooting here so I don't jump to that screen again, that horrible mess. In terms of the look of the game, yeah, the sprites are fatter, but are they so distorted that I need to create separate assets for the different aspect modes? Doesn't look like it. I mean, they do more or less look as expected. What I could do is redesign them for maybe something in the middle ground. Like for example, if I do put this out on an iOS device, that would be like a, let's see, 3:2, depending on the iPhone. And that's one. If you divide those, it's 1.5. So it's kind of in the middle ground between, the standard or the old school 4:3 aspect ratio and the new 16:9 aspect ratio. So if I design for that middle ground, stretch a bit for widescreen, shrink a bit for old monitors, might actually look okay, because right now I'm stretching from one extreme to the other. So it might actually be a good idea to design this for 3:2. Unfortunately, old boy here got stuck, so I'll have to come up with some debugging code for that as well. But so this is as designed, and in widescreen mode it does look a little bit chunky. I'll have to think about that. It's not too bad. Not ideal, but it's not too bad. So it's kind of, would I want to make 3 times the graphics just to compensate for this when it doesn't look too bad? Yeah, probably not. So probably what I do want to do is design for the middle ground, just to put one of those resolutions in there. Let's add that actually. Let's add an iOS or iPhone style 3:2 resolution in here too. And in this case, 3:2. So 1.5 minus 4/3. So it's 0.166666666. Okay. Really? 1.5 minus. Okay. Make sure I was doing that right. 4/3. 16 divided by 9 minus 4 divided by 3. Okay. Alright. Well, the math is working out, so this should be an iOS style resolution. Okay. Let's see how it looks on that. This one I suspect won't look as chunky because it's not going to such an extreme. So in this case, F6, the 2 widescreens, and then the iOS version. Yeah, this one looks just fine. So probably if I design for this mode, give me that middle ground, then I'll be fine. So I don't think I need to design 3 times the assets. Because one other advantage to not redesigning assets is that I can keep the gameplay the same, because if I do redesign the assets, what I'm essentially going to be doing is, you know, that that amount that they've been fattened out, I'm going to be shrinking down again so that it looks the same. But the problem is the gameplay field is going to now be wide. So although it'll look nice, it'll be a totally different game, especially since this game really depends on, those sidewalls, because the bullets are bouncing around. So if there's more space for the bullets to bounce around, that means it's going to be easier for the player to dodge those bullets. Might be harder for them to kill enemies to make up for that, but that's not ideal because it'll change the gameplay. I don't want to change the gameplay, so the ideal solution is to just have the exact same gameplay across all 3 different resolution versions. So I want to keep the same sprites and just, if the field gets fatter, fatten out the sprites so that the gameplay doesn't change. That's the ideal solution. And it was definitely good that I did that today, because yeah, sure, let's stop the plugin. Love how errors just happen. This is live. Jumping over to Trello. Okay, so I do have the option to change the resolution now. That's fine. More than change resolution, it's change aspect ratio. And let me actually jump this up to 1. Because part of what I want to be doing here is calculating the different standard resolutions. So like, for example, 1080p, 720p, all the different standard resolutions, I probably want those to be the options rather than just this arbitrary thing that I'm coming up with. So the first thing I want to do before I actually make an options menu with the choices is to probably have those resolutions. And I also want one other thing. Which shouldn't be too difficult, actually. And that is to have a system in place so that when the game first starts up, to default to the ideal resolution. So like for my monitor, that would probably be, oh shoot, what am I at? Like, I think I'm at 1280 now. Maybe I'm at something that's quite high, but it's still a 4:3 aspect ratio. So I'd probably want to detect that that's how much monitor space I have to deal with and make that the default for the game. And then if the user wants to change it to be smaller, or they want a widescreen version or something from there, then let them pick that, but just automatically pick the resolution. And of course, save that resolution to their settings file so that they don't have to keep changing that every time they come in. So that is something that I do want to do as well. So let's review what I did today. I did do a game over menu. I did do a rough options screen with the options menu options. And I put all those in. They don't do anything now because that's a featured task. But they are there, and I can go back to the main title screen. And I can change my resolution. So I did get all this stuff done. Without going too far over. Obviously, at the beginning of every show I have, quite a bit of an intro, so I do make up for that a little bit at the end. Episode 13. Okay, and so let's bring this over here. If Trello will cooperate with me. It is kind of bogging down a little bit. It's unfortunate that I can only add those cards on the right side. Maybe I'll change this task list around and flip it or something so that I don't have to keep doing this every time. Because by the time I get to like episode 600 or something, this is not going to be a viable option for me. Okay, there we go. So let's figure out what I want to do next week. I do have these things roughly in priority order, but let's see here. Auto detect ideal resolution, resolution options. These are actually pretty low priority now because the main thing I wanted to get out of the way with resolution was making sure that I didn't have to make a whole bunch of extra sprites. Found the solution to that, so these are actually pretty low priority. So let's skip over that. I don't really need to worry about changing brightness because again, that's not a very high priority thing. That shouldn't be too difficult. I think this will be a good idea. This stage random object nodes. Right now I have the barrels hand placed, but if I want to make the levels a little random, what I want to do is have certain spots where these barrels can go and let the game figure out where to put them. And one other thing I kind of want to do is have the enemies, when you shoot them or when they shoot themselves, leave behind a score so that you know how many points you got for killing them. Because right now, the score depends on how fast that bullet's going as well as the type of enemy it is. But because all I'm doing right now is changing that number in the upper right of the screen, the player doesn't really know how many points they're getting for killing these things or for how fast the bullets are going. So I want to have, when the enemy dies and disappears, leave behind a score. And also, something in the score part itself that shows how many points were added. And I think that'll do it. That should be a good episode. Getting back to gameplay and away from system. So this one and the last episode were pretty system heavy, but I'll be getting back into gameplay because I solved a lot of those issues. Alright, so I guess that wraps it up. I'll just drop off my desktop here. Thank you for watching this show. I do this every week, every Saturday in Japan from 8 to 10. If you're in the States, I did check. It isn't daylight savings time yet, so it hasn't fallen back to the standard time yet, so same rules apply. If you're Pacific, it's 4 to 6 on Fridays. If you're Mountain, it starts at 5 p.m. on Fridays. Central 6, Eastern 7 p.m. on Fridays, and if you're in the UK, it's from midnight to 2 a.m. Early Saturday, or late Friday, depending on how you think about it. If you're with me here in Japan, it's 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Saturday morning, and if you're in Australia, which has different dates for changing daylight savings time as well, so this is going to get crazy come October, if I can remember everything, but roughly if you're in Australia, it's 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., depending on which part of Australia you live in. And if you're in New Zealand, I think it's just noon to 2 p.m. on Saturdays when you can catch the show. If you've missed any episodes in the past and you want to see them, they're all up on youtube.com, Blue Tengu Studio, all one word. If you want to watch this live at those times that I gave, it's Twitch TV, Blue Tengu. And all that information, I always say when I'm coming online, etc., through my Twitter account, which is btengu. And of course on the site I also mention what we're doing and what we're planning and stuff. So if you're interested, go over to www.bluetengu.com. And I also make announcements on Facebook, so facebook.com Blue Tengu Studio. And I think that's about it. I think that's going to wrap it up for now. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next week, and I will see you next time.